Hello and welcome to the Sports Report, the Archives. I'm Dave Rush in Niagara Falls, along with John Poulter in Toronto. And John, today we're going to focus on the career of NHL great Wayne Gretzky. So let's start with the great one.
Well, the great one is a great definition, tremendous nickname, and very descriptive of the man as a hockey player. He played on 4 Stanley Cup winning teams with Edmonton. He played on 4 Canada Cup winning teams, 1 World Cup winning team, 1 World Championship team, and 1 World Junior Hockey Championship team. He played 20 years in the NHL with Edmonton, Los Angeles, St. Louis, and the New York Rangers. He's a career leader in goals in NHL history with 894. He's a career leader in assists in NHL history with 1,963. That means by default, he's the leading point scorer in NHL history with 2,857. Think about this. If he had never scored an NHL goal, he would still be the leading point scorer in NHL history because he has more assists, 1963, than the next highest career scorer has in points. That's Jaromir Jagr with 1921. Jagr's now retired, so he's not going to catch him. For several years, he was winning scoring titles, and in those years had more assists than the second highest point scorer had goals. He was born in Brantford, Ontario in 1961. Brantford's about 60 miles southwest of Toronto, has a population of slightly over 100,000. As a child, he always had exceptional status, similar when he was playing youth hockey, and he almost always played against older players and putting up monstrous numbers. After 1 year of major junior hockey and 1 season in the defunct World Hockey Association, he broke into the NHL.
Now, John, when he did go to the NHL, he had all the success as a younger player. What were the thoughts and expectations for Wayne Gretzky when he entered the NHL?
It was kind of different. There were, you talk to 3 people, you'd get 4 different opinions. Everybody recognized that he was a great talent. Everybody recognized that he was head and shoulders above everybody that he was playing against. But it's the old story. He had always, up until the time he got into the pros, he'd played against boys. Now all of a sudden he was going to be playing against men and playing against players that were not only bigger and older than he was, but more experienced than he was. So while everybody knew that he was a generational talent, there was a lot of question about how dominant he would be. And of course, his career told us that he became very dominant.
Excellent. All right. So continue more on the great one, Wayne Gretzky, with John Poulter in Toronto.
Well, after that 1 year of major junior hockey in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and 1 season in the defunct World Hockey Association, as I mentioned, he broke into the NHL at the age of 18. At that time, he was 6 feet tall and weighed just over 160 pounds. And in those days, the average NHL player weighed 189 pounds. So that sort of went a little bit to the question of how good he would be that we chatted about a minute ago. Now, for the majority of his career, he played at 185 pounds, and even that was small by the standards for NHL players. By comparison, you look at today, and the average player in the NHL, is well over 6 feet and over 200 pounds. So it would have been a very interesting time for him to have played hockey. But to emphasize just how dominant Gretzky was, consider that from 1982 through 1985, the Edmonton Oilers averaged 423 goals a season. Gretzky averaged 207 points in those 4 seasons. Or he was part of 49% of the team's goals over that 4-year period.
Amazing.
To that point in time, no player had scored more than 152 points in any one season, and Gretzky averaged 55 points more than that in each of those 4 years. Absolutely unbelievable when you sit down and look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
He had 50 hat tricks in career regular season games. He's been retired for 20 years, and still many of his records are not being approached, let alone challenged. He's the only player to score more than 200 points in a season, and he did that 4 times. He holds 40 NHL regular season records and 15 NHL playoff records. He's a 10-time winner of the Art Ross Trophy, which is presented to the NHL season points leading scorer. That is a record. In addition to the 10 Art Ross trophies, In his very first NHL season, he tied Marcel Dion for the scoring lead, but Dion was awarded the trophy on the basis of having scored more goals. He's a 9-time winner of the Hart Trophy, presented to the NHL's most valuable player each year. That too is a record. He scored those 2,857 points in 1,487 regular season games. That's an average of 1.92 points per game over a 20-year career. The Oilers traded Gretzky to the Los Angeles Kings in August of 1988, and that trade greatly increased hockey awareness in the United States, and especially in the so-called Sun Belt non-traditional hockey markets. He changed the game from an offensive standpoint, not only by the number of points he scored, but also his ability to view the game from everywhere on the ice and anticipate the play so well. He changed the speed of the game, and while it was not as fast a game in Gretzky's day as it is today, the pace of the game in his era was so much faster than the era that preceded his arrival. His playmaking ability was second to none. He was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame just a few months after his retirement, one of the very few players to be elected without the mandatory waiting period. He's the only NHL player to have his sweater retired by all teams. How significant is that? Well, the only baseball player with that honor is Jackie Robinson. That's very select company.
It sure is. John Poulter in Toronto on Wayne Gretzky. John, how would he fit into today's game? You mentioned, he was a smaller guy. Most players today over 200 pounds. How do you think he'd have fit in today?
I think he would have fit in wonderfully because he was fast, he was innovative, he was an offensive genius. Today's game is a much younger game, so the game is fast. He would have, I think he would have fit in tremendously well. And quite frankly, I think Gretzky was such a great player. You could have let him play in the 30s, and I think he would have been a superstar, whether he played in the 30s, the 80s, or the 2020s. I think the guy would be dominant. I think it would be a tremendous amount of fun to watch him play today in the newer arenas with the bigger ice surfaces, the new rules. I just think it would be interesting to watch him play. And in a lot of ways, I wish he was coming into the league today rather than in 1979.
With John Poulter in Toronto, I'm Dave Rush in Niagara Falls. This is the Sports Report, the Archives.